Make Weird Music is happy to welcome. Well, how do we describe him? He's a music fan like nobody else. He's a record label owner. He's a booking agent. He's an all-around nice guy, and now he's a resident of Toledo, Spain. Leonardo Pavkovic is with us. How are you doing, my friend?
Hi, Cedric. I'm very well. I'm here in beautiful Toledo in central Spain. This is exactly the center of the Spain, geographical center. I'm here only for a couple of weeks, going back to USA in a couple of days, and then coming back in February. I enjoy very much being here, and for a couple of years, maybe 3 years maximum, I will be so-called bi-coastal between New York and Spain, and then eventually I will just permanently move here.
Well, you're a citizen of the world anyway. You're a true citizen of the world regardless. I mean, there's practically nowhere you haven't been, I'm sure. We are here today to commemorate the 20th anniversary of MoonJune Records. Congratulations, first and foremost, because starting a label can't be an easy thing. Run us real quick through how the whole label got started. I understand it began basically with Soft Machine.
Yeah, it started by accident, but a very good accident. And to cut story short, because it's a very long story. I knew Elton Dean, legendary sax player from Soft Machine that I befriended back in the 80s when I lived in Italy. He used to play very often in Italy. Then on What's Rattling, Yahoo News Group, led by Aymeric Leroy from France, that is Yahoo group dedicated to Canterbury scene and Soft Machine, all that stuff, Caravan, Hudson North, Dong. And I found that in Germany, in October of 1999, there was a band called Software playing a gig. It's a project including Elton Dean, Hugh Hopper, John Marshall from Soft Machine, and Keith Tippett.
Okay.
All four favorite musicians of mine. The only two people that I knew were Elton Dean and Keith Tippett. I knew much better Elton than Keith, and then I was very intrigued. And then I get in touch with Elton Dean thanks to a mutual friend, the great late American legendary trombonist Roswell Rudd.
Okay.
And I get in touch with Elton. Elton said, "Look, we would like to continue with these projects. Can you help us?" And I was involved in a record label on a side in New York City called Jazz Magnet Records with jazz publicist Jim Igo and Brazilian graphic designer, photographer Fernando Telici. Both of us run a graphic design studio team. And then I said to Elton, "Okay, look, I run a little label, with very experienced person in the music business, Jim Igo. We can help you." And then coincidentally, Elton that year came to New York City for the first time in 39 years. Last time he was in 1971 when Soft Machine opened for Miles Davis in New York City in the Beacon Theater. And he came and played at Vision Festival in New York City with Joe Gallivan, drummer, and Ivan Parker, and Marcio Matos, Brazilian free jazz upright bass player who lived in London. And I met Elton for the first time in 12 years. And then he stayed in New York for several days extra. I invited him actually to stay with me. He's supposed to stay in New York only for 3 days. He stayed with me for additional 3 days. He went upstate New York to visit his friend Roswell Rudd. And we started fantasizing. But what's interesting, just months before that, when I found that information about software band, I created a website called MoonJune.com in 1999. And that website wasn't nothing else than I said, okay, maybe I can have a kind of tribute website, like a fun website about Soft Machine.
Right.
I didn't know how to do websites. I know a lot about the band, but it was just kind of one of those childish dreams that that actually somehow it worked. But it was just childish dream because in those days, me and a friend of mine, Brazilian guy, we were it was a special deal on one of those portals to register websites for a very low amount of money. And I registered the thing. And then, Elton was very enthusiastic about this, this project, but that was in 2000.
And it just kind of took on a life of its own from there.
And but then, because he was a little bit pushy, but in a good sense, he wasn't doing well financially, and he saw that this band has potential. And then I knew Keith. I knew also Hugh Hopper, met him a couple of times. Right. And then I didn't know John Marshall, and he gave me telephone numbers of everybody, and I called them. And, they weren't so interested because, first of all, Keith said, look, I like these guys, they're friends of mine, but I don't want to be in any band. I just want to have a project. If we have gigs like from time to time, that's fine. I don't want to be in any band. And Elton was pushed. He said, look, we can do Stop Machine. And when I spoke to Hugh Hopper and Joe Marshall, said, no, we don't want to do Stop Machine, anything else but Stop Machine. Okay, fine, and that died, in 2001, actually in 2000, I went to the Nearfest, very well-known progressive rock festival, and I met by accident a Japanese guy who became a very good friend of mine still today, called Tatsuro Ueda. And then in 2001, when I started MoonJune Records with one live record of Elton Dean with Mark Hewins and with DFA, Italian fusion progressive rock band, that played at Nearfest 2000. I befriended them. Then I said I will release the album, and then Italian progressive rock band Finisterre, which means in 2001 in June I went to a second Nearfest, and I had my match table, and I started officially like MoonJune Records. And I decided last moment to be called MoonJune Records because I wanted to call company Noah Noah Music. That's why my email is noahnoahmusic@moonjune.com. Why? Because I'm a big fan of Paul Gauguin, a legendary French painter who escaped from the Western civilization, went to the Polynesia. And always I had this romantic dream to escape from a place where I was born in former Yugoslavia, then in southern Italy, to go somewhere very, far from where I'm from. Right. But in last moment, a friend of mine told me, it doesn't sound very good as a label, Noah Noah Music, And I said, okay, I will call it MoonJune, because when you say MoonJune in any language, see, like I have very strong accent. And if I use R and other kind of, sounds like, sometimes people cannot understand me. People ask me, where you were born? I say, in Boston. I said, oh, you don't sound like somebody from Boston. I said, no, I didn't say Boston, I said Bosnia. And then I said MoonJune. In Korean, in Portuguese, in Swahili, in Chinese, in any language, it's MoonJune.
It sounds the same.
But while I was helping Elton with his project, because I told you he was a little bit pushy because he didn't, he was broke. Right. I met this Japanese friend that I befriended the year before at Nearfest, and just out of curiosity, because I'm that kind of guy, like I said, I always had this kind of childish dreams. I said, is Stop Machine famous in Japan? And he said, of course it's famous in Japan. I said, look, I have this situation. I explained the situation. I have like 3 guys from Stop Machine, from different periods. We don't have a 4th guy because Keith Tippett doesn't want to join. They are called Software, but eventually we can call them Stop Machine. And he said, oh, I have a right guy for you. He's one of my best friends since high school. He's a top guy in music business in Japan. When I contacted this guy, who became my friend, very close friend today, Masama Matsuzaki, and he said, oh, I want this. I will help you in Japan, And then I contacted Elton Dean. Of course, he was enthusiastic. Said, oh, he saw money because, he was a completely broke jazz musician. And Hugh Hopper said, okay, let's see, but I'm not sure about calling Stop Machine, but let's think about that. John Marshall said, look, if Hugh Hopper and Elton Dean wants to do it, I can do it. Who will be the keyboard player? Because it's Stop Machine, there's a Mike Rutledge. Of course, Mike Rutledge doesn't do anything since 1976, 77. Then the first choice was Alex McGuire, who became a very good friend of mine. He's amazing. jazz pianist and jazz rock keyboardist, whom I befriended, but he wasn't strong name enough because these Japanese said, "Oh, you have to have a important name." Then we tried, a friend of mine suggested Dave Stewart. And, when you mentioned Dave Stewart, I never met Dave Stewart in my life. He's one of my favorite musicians.
He is amazing.
But Elton Dean and John and Hugh Hopper say, anybody but not that guy. We don't want to work with that guy, period. Because, they had bad experience with this guy. And David Stewart has kind of, some, fame of being in certain situations a little bit difficult. I cannot say anything because I don't know. Where I spoke to him several times on the phone, we exchanged emails. And then I was in Los Angeles. And then the same guy who asked me to contact Dave Stewart, he's an American guy, former journalist. He contributed to Melody Maker in the 70s, writing about progressive rock and jazz rock shows from Los Angeles. His older brother is a very well-known American rock journalist, friend of all those 60s bands from Los Angeles, Doors and Frank Zappa and Neil Young and Johnny Mitchell, everybody. And his younger brother, Ken Kubernik, became a good friend of mine. He said, okay, David is not working. Okay, then say next time when you come to Los Angeles, that was in November of 2001. And I was supposed to go to Los Angeles in the end of January of 2002. Say next time when you come to Los Angeles, I will drive you down to San Juan Capistrano, Orange County. You'll meet the greatest guitar player that ever walked planet Earth. I say, wow, I'm meeting the mighty Alan Holdsworth. Yes. And when I say that to other three guys, especially Joe Marshall was very excited because he played with Alan. And Elton say, wow, Alan, we used to drink, and I didn't see him in 4 years, we used to drink together. And the Huber say, who needs a keyboard player when you have Alan Holdsworth? That guy is true. And I met mighty Alan Holdsworth on January 31st, 2002. And this is what I told him. Look, Alan, I have this band called Software, and would you like to join them? It's a sort of soft machine. It's Joe Marshall, Elton Dean, and Hugh Hopper. He said, John Marshall? John fucking Marshall. I love John Marshall. I want to play, yes. And he accepted it. But what is happening, because I found a good connection in Japan, and then Japanese gave me money. They put in my account, Universal Japan. They put money in my account, $25,000, 50% of the $50,000 advances. Before the band met, before the band exchanged any music, played one single note, and it was unbelievable. But then, through some mutual connections, I met a guy in Los Angeles who hooked me up with Mascot Provogue label in Holland, and with Mike Warning from Shrapnel Records in California. And virtually my own project that we named Softworks. It's not actually MoonJune Records, but that's how MoonJune Music started, because I licensed those albums. Actually, those albums now belongs to me because the licensing expired after 10 years. And because I started MoonJune Records with those 3 live records, Elton Dean and Hugh Hopper, with Mark Hewins live album, Bar Torque, and 2 live albums of these 2 progressive rock bands from Italy. And that's how MoonJune Records and MoonJune Music started, which means MoonJune Records is a label. And I never imagined I will have a label. I just put those 3 albums to help a couple of friends. But on the other side, I started MoonJune Music, which is kind of Softworks. Then I went to Japan with them. But before going to Japan, this Japanese guy said, look, my friend Tatsuro told me that you are friend with PFM. I said, yeah, I know the drummer. He put me in. I went, he said, look, if you help me licensing their 3 albums from late 90s when they reunited in Japan, I will help you to book them in Japan. I said, fine, I was still working in a graphic company. It was fun for me, something aside, and that's how I became a booking agent, because he hooked me up with major agents in Japan, and he told me what to do. And he wanted me to do that because it will be conflict of interest if he did that everything. He just wanted to license those albums and to make DVD because he was working for a major Japanese TV company, Wow Broadcasting Corporation. Which means that those are two things that make a story of MoonJune, which is the MoonJune music booking. I started with PFM and with Softworks, and then PFM in May of 2002, and Softworks in Japan in 2003 in August, and then PFM. I had a tour in Venezuela, Panama, Costa Rica, and Mexico in 2002, and that's how I started being booking agent out of nowhere. Okay, and I started being the record label out of nowhere.
And now you're practically a mogul.
And because I like most of the times people say, "Oh, I will start my record label because I will do this, I will do that, I will have a little money, I will find a distributor, I will have a lawyer, I will have this, I will have that." I didn't have anything of that. And people start booking agencies, say, "Oh, I'm booking agency. Like I have a website, I have this, I have that, I have contacts." I didn't have anything. I just had this kind of magic, interaction between the people that I knew. And it was something happening in air. All stars were lined up into that MoonJune direction. And now I booked over 2,500, 2,600 gigs. I have to, probably I can count them all, in all five continents. Right. And I released 120 albums. And when I see now, what happened 20 years ago, if I go outside of myself, if I'm Horatio Nardini, I say, wow, this guy, Leonardo, he did things. I say, wow, how did that happen? I don't know.
Riddle me this. Riddle me this. You've got 120 albums out there. Tell me 4 or 5 that stick out in your mind. They don't have to be your favorites. I understand how difficult that is, but just 4 or 5 that jump out.
I think I have at least 50 favorite albums of mine. But there are certain albums that they are albums that made dramatic change in what I'm doing. See, before I kind of produced a couple of albums, especially those Soft Machine Legacy albums, Softworks, and then Soft Machine, because that's the main kind of band that everything started around. Elton Dean, Hugh Hopper, John Marshall, then Alan also left the band, and John Etheridge came, and the Elton died, and Theo Travis came to the band, and Roy Babington died. Hugh Hopper. That's one thing. I think I would like to put Soft Machine things aside, because that's one thing. Okay. If I'm talking about everything else, there are, originally I was putting albums because people asked me, "Oh, can you help me with this?" Or live album, can you, I was helping Phil Miller, who was a friend of mine, Beppe Crovella. I was helping Hugh Hopper. I was releasing the album, Elton Dean. But then my first album that I can say, that's what I am. It was Vicky Dermavan, Passar Clever, that I recorded in London. Because that's still one of my, I believe, is still one of my all-time greatest albums. Because I am friend with Vicky for many years. He's Indonesian, very well-known pianist and keyboardist in Indonesia. He's famous for other kind of music, not for this kind of crazy music that we like. Right. But that's when he told me, because he was my friend. I already released one album with Jimmy Haslip, Jad Wackerman, and a couple of guests like Deva Bujana, Tokpati, 2 guitar players from Indonesia, and Jerry Goodman on violin. But then when we went to London, he went to London for something completely different. And he said, "Look, Mas Leonardo," Mas means brother in Indonesian, said, "I would like to go to London and record an album." And because he's an amazing mini Moog player, I said, "Wow, Vicky, I would like you to have a mini Moog power trio." And the first 2 people that I was thinking of were Pino Palladino and my friend Gary Husband. But then, exactly when we were talking on Skype in those days, I saw that Pino Palladino is on tour with The Who in that exact period. And then I said, Gary Husband is on tour with Billy Cobham. Okay, I even didn't contact Gary because he's like my brother. I said, well, I have to contact him because Vicky had exactly those days. Then because I became a friend with a couple of English musicians, actually some of them, none of them, only one guy is English, Mark Greenfield, but the other guys are 3 Israeli guys living in England, and one is Swiss French, who was introduced to me by my good friend Bill Bruford. It's Nicholas Meyer, who actually played also with Jeff Beck for 5-6 years until just recently. And I loved his music, and his band Asaf Sirkis was a drummer, and Gilad Atzmon was a sax player. And Gilad had another band that I loved with Asaf Sirkis and Yaron Stavi, bass player. And I said to Vicky, because we were already talking about this kind of music, I said, Vicky, let's forget about this kind of mini Moog power trio. Let's do something that we were talking for a couple of years. And I know that except Nicholas Meyer, you don't know these musicians. But trust me, these are exactly right musicians for you. And Nicholas Meyer, Yaron Stavi, Gilad Atzmon, and Asaf Sirkis. And I say, and friend of mine, I would like you, Mark Finfield, to be mixing and mastering engineer. But he should play at least in one tune, because he's an amazing guitar player, and Nicholas can play in several others. We went to London, we had a great time. An album came amazing, 5 stars in downbeat, unbelievable. We got about 25 stars all around the world. And that was the first time that Indonesian artist was awarded with 5 stars in Downbeat magazine. And at the end of 2016, this album was considered a masterpiece, one of the greatest jazz albums, jazz and beyond jazz in USA, according to journalists and readers of Downbeat magazine. And what is important about this album, and I'm spending more time about this album than I spend less time about other albums, because that's the first time that I felt like I'm the sort of producer. Because Vicky is my friend, said, look, Mas Leonardo, I trust you, you're my friend, we have similar taste in music. Let's go for it. And I felt kind of cool. I felt, wow, that's exactly what I want to do. Then another second most important thing that happened. I befriended Serbian guitar player Dusan Jeftovic, who lives in Barcelona, and his friend, Catalan Spanish drummer Xavi Reja. And I released the album of Dusan on my label. And then he recorded the album in a place that is pure magic. It's 1 hour west of Barcelona, called La Casa Murada, the Stone House.
Yes.
And because Mark Finfield already had recorded one album of his trio with Asaf Sirkis and Yaron Stavi, he wanted to record another album, and he was looking for studios. First album, that album was recorded with in a studio owned by Jeremy Stacy. And the second album, Jeremy didn't have studio. He went to do that album somewhere else. Then, in meanwhile, I was in Barcelona. I went to that place. Say, wow, Dusan and Xavi recorded many albums. And I said to Mark, if I fly you and Asaf and Yaron, we can do it in Spain because it's cheaper. And look at this, right? It's one of those my crazy ideas. Then what happened, on the other side, Mark Finfield fell in love with music of Markus Reuter and vice versa. And Markus Reuter asked me to put him in touch with Asaf Sirkis. He said, I really love that drummer. And Asaf was a good friend of mine, and he's one of my favorite drummers. And two things that I share in common with Bill Bruford. Birthday, May 17th, and our unconditional love for Asaf Sirkis. And I said to Marcus, look, Mark is recording with Yaron and Asaf. Why you don't come to Barcelona to play with Asaf? Because Dusan Jeftovic also wants to play with Asaf, and he will call his friend Vasil Hadjimanov, Serbian keyboard player, piano player from Serbia. And then out of nowhere, I booked 6-day studio in La Casa Murada. Unbelievably magic place. First 2 days supposed to be Mark Finfield, Markus Reuter, Asaf Sirkis just improvising. Then third and fourth day, Mark Finfield supposed to do his regular album, continuation of Proof of Light with Yaron Stavi and Asaf Sirkis with charts, composed music. And fifth and sixth day, Dusan Jeftovic to play with Asaf Sirkis and Vasil Hadjimanov, which means that I connected Asaf with Marcus and with Dusan. I connected Marcus with Mark Winfield. And we went there to La Casa Murad. We had unbelievable time. I was cooking. We stayed in this amazing mansion. They have like 7 rooms. We recorded, sound engineer, Jesus Rovira, amazing guy, amazing sound engineer. And that was the thing when I say, wow, because I put this together. And I felt like I'm sort of producer. That's when those two things were very important for me. We are not talking about the best or greatest albums. We are talking about things that really marked big change in the history of MoonJune Records. Rather than being an album who is doing a promotion distribution of albums created by other people, of course, with my little input, I wanted to share this kind of experience with my friends.
Right.
First of all, those people are my friends. See, I'm like that. I like to work with people for the things that I really love, with people that I like. If I'm booking guys, that can be anything, but of course, I'm lucky. I work with great people. But when it comes to MoonJune Records, I just need to work with people that are like me. Then, after we did that session, I went to Indonesia, where I go very often. I've been over 30 times. And I met Vicky, who is one of my best friends. I said, Vicky, check this. Unbelievable. I want to go he said, Masleo, I want to go to Spain. I must record an album there. And I organized a session for him next year with Carlos Benavent, who played bass with Chicoria and Paco de Lucia for 4 years, with Gallon Stavi and Asaf Cities, and with Nguyen Lee, who is one of my favorite guitar players, French-Vietnamese guitar player. And then for 2 days. On the third day, which in the Indonesian it said Hari Ketiga, we recorded an album that I believe it's my favorite album on MoonJune Records for many reasons. It's a complete exercise of total artistic and spiritual and philosophical freedom, where 4 musicians came into the studio after recording other albums previous days. Marcus Reuter, Vicky Darmavan, Boris Savoldelli, Asaf Cities. They created unbelievable music. And then after that, with Boris Savoldelli, we worked on restructuring some of those improvisation, adding some lyrics, some philosophical lyrics, based on the philosophy of Lucretius, famous Roman poet from thousands of years ago. And that's, I'm not saying that that's the best album, but that's the album that I like the most because for the first time in my life, I felt a complete and total sense of freedom. Because I had 4 friends who are unbelievable improvisers, who made me happy, and each of them was happy. And that's very important, that we felt freedom. I know that for some people that album is very difficult to digest because it's not easy music. It doesn't matter. And it's my favorite album for that exact reason, because it started, I had Passa Clever in London with Vicky. I had the first scene of La Casa Murad and Chan. And then that means that I really felt like, wow, I have a real label that I kind of secretly wanted to have. It
sounds to me like
kind of music, but it's label where people are free to express themselves in the way that they want. Because I always struggled to be a free man, spiritually, philosophically, and same for my friends, musicians. Right. And in a beautiful place, in the middle of nowhere. And
it sounds to me like everything just...
that's the thing that I really like to do.
Right. And it sounds to me like things just kept coming together really organically, just one thing leading into another.
Else, if you see history of MoonJune Records from number 1 to number 120, it's sort of a multi-layered domino effect. Nothing came out of nowhere. Even a couple of things that came sort of out of nowhere, like Canadian band Mahogany Frog or Italian band Slivovic or the Serbian guitar player Dusan Jeftovic, it's not from nowhere. It came from somewhere. That it doesn't matter from where. It came from somewhere. You see, I always characterize MoonJune Records as a label of progressive music, exploring and expanding boundaries of jazz, rock, avant, ethno, and the unknown, and anything in between and beyond. The unknown part is the most important. And then everything beyond and around, that's what it is. Like, that's why I struggle being a progressive rock label, which I'm not. I struggle being a fusion label, which I'm not. I struggle with the thing that people consider me jazz label, which I'm not. Some people in the beginning of my career as a label say that I'm contemporary. No, like now I feel good because you cannot put me in any box because I cannot be put in any box. Because if people just ask me where I'm coming from, that's a trouble. I have to spend like 2 hours just to explain why I was born in place. These two things, like, you know, and I feel like this is and each of these musicians that I mentioned to you, and many others like Stefan Tellen and Beledo and even Stop Machine and Stickman, they don't belong to explicitly an exact kind of music. It's all kind of, and that's
You've created a genre that we could call non-genre.
Yeah,
and everything just kind of fits.
Why to have genres? Say progressive rock, heavy metal. No, it's just music. Look, when I was starting collecting albums, I started with the Sly and Family Stone, Jimi Hendrix, Sha-Na-Na. Then I switched to Sandra and King Crimson and Pink Floyd and John Renbourn and Faithful Convention and Ravi Shankar and Milton Nascimento. Like, I didn't listen to music because music is like a hippie music or a prog or a jazz or fusion or heavy metal or blues. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's music is music. Johnny Hooker is equally great to me as a Keith Jarrett. I'm a big blues fan. When I say to people that I like blues, say, why you like blues? We thought you're a progressive guy. What's wrong with that? When I will say people that I like Sedaka music, say, oh, I didn't know you like Pantera. What's wrong with Pantera? It's one of my favorite bands. I saw Pantera. I couldn't believe how great they were. Because to me, it's music. It's my connection to certain kind of music. It doesn't matter what genre it is. I just go there. It can be any music. Of course, if somebody asks me, do you like jazz? I don't know. How I can say that I like jazz? What jazz means. There are certain albums of Vito Marsalis that I like, certain that I like. It's all about albums. It's even not about musicians. It's about albums. I'm not the guy that will listen to Bob James and this kind of music. But I love his first album called One on CTI Records. I love that album. Right. For me, it's all about albums. It's about concrete. I don't like to put musician in this or that kind of box. It's about either I connect. See, like Duke Ellington said something that there is a good and bad music. I don't agree with that. Right. What that means. There is only two kind of music, which is music that we dig or we don't dig, like or we don't like, and anything in between. That in between is place that we can kind of navigate and go to any direction. I like this, but maybe not. Oh, I love this, but this music that we are kind of start acquiring during our life as a active listener, and that's what my label is about some of the diversity. From people like Deva Bujana and Beledo, who are kind of more kind of melodic, fusion-y, progressive, blah blah blah, ethnic, to the things that like Marcus Reuter and Truls too, that will blow your mind, or Hari Ketiga or Vicky, the things that or Stefan Tellen, this is the things that I like because I don't want to stick with one. I'm not like Mike Varney that will stick with guitar players. I don't stick with anything. I don't want to stick with anything. I want to stick with my friends, and if I feel that things can happen, it will happen.
Okay, great. What's coming down the road?
I have several albums, and one that I particularly like. I'm 11, 12 years ago. A couple of friends from my Barry Cleveland and Anil Prasad introduced me to Mark Winfield, and I fell in love with Mark Winfield. I still, it's one of my all-time favorite guitar players. And I released many albums from Mark in different constellations and different lineups. But this album, it's a kind of continuation of Tales from the Dreaming City. We will call it the Tales from the Dreaming World because it's related to COVID. And it has Gary Husband and Asaf Sirkis. Both of them play drums on every track. And Gary Husband is overdubbed the keyboards and acoustic piano on some tracks. And then on 5 tracks, on 5 tracks I have Tony Levin on upright bass. On 1 track he's playing bass guitar, and on 4 tracks I have Percy Jones. And it's outstanding album, and I really love how it came out, and it's almost done. And I have a new album of Canadian band Mahogany Frog, which is the called Faust. It's kind of soundtrack for the silent movie from 20s, right. And they kind of improvised on they toured in Canada in a small movie theaters, presenting this kind of silent movie from 20s. They played live. It's really right. Interesting. And I have a couple of other albums, like, Beledo, we recorded here in Spain with Carles Benavent and Jorge Pardo, another legendary Spanish musician who plays flute and saxophone, who played for 4 years with Paco de Lucia, and also a lot of times with Gil Goldstein and especially Chicoria, with Asaf Sirkis, the omnipresent Asaf Sirkis. Like, if you see, like, I cannot live. There are certain people like Asaf Sirkis, Marcus Reuter, and
they just keep popping up.
Especially Marcus Reuter and Asaf Sirkis, they're all over the place.
Right.
And Gary Husband, of course, he's getting more and more, like, and I have a couple of projects with Gary Husband. And I have other projects, and still kind of, cannot talk. Of course, Stickman is making the new album right now. Hopefully we can tour in April and early May. We don't know, but we hope. And, there will be new albums.
Because you're supposed to be stopping in my town in Chicago, so I'm eagerly awaiting that one. So
we all need to make some money, especially in Opus and everybody else. And but we don't know. See, like, the world is crazy. Like, here in Spain, like, so many gigs canceled, and I canceled. I had several cancellations in USA of several bands, like Pact. We had cancellation of a couple of gigs, and this new band that we created with Percy Jones, Alex Marchek, and Kenny Grabowski, Box of Noise. We are going to California to rehearse new tunes for 4 days.
Okay.
We're supposed to do 5 or 6 gigs. We're only doing 3. 2 at Baked Potato in Los Angeles, and 1 in Alvas in San Pedro. Unfortunately, gigs in San Diego, in Ensenada, and Escondido, and Phoenix were cancelled because of the COVID. Yeah. And what
we just have to see where it goes.
Like booking, and I was hit very hard with booking. I had over 200 gigs cancelled, and it's keep, it's nothing is happening. Like, we just postponing.
Right.
And things are accumulating. But then, I supposed to have like 5-6 gigs every year in Japan. Now I have like 13 gigs that's supposed to be in Japan. But when? Even it's only with 2 promoters that, it's not only my band, there are hundreds of other bands, and everything is kind of shifting, like, to, it's one thing is pushing the other thing, and then it's kind of confusing the schedules. Like, I had Kenny Grabowski scheduled for certain things. Now, because of cancellations of other bands that he's playing with, the other bands were cancelled, and they were scheduled for other dates. Then my dates that I planned for Pact and for Beledo and for a Box of Noise, I cannot do them anymore. Then I have to reinvent myself and see when I can see them, because when I can make them, and we don't know. See, like, Kenny can have the most amazing year ever, or anything can be cancelled.
So basically, we're just crossing our fingers and hoping for the best when all's said and done.
Yeah, look.
I hate to end it here, but there's so much more we can talk about, and we're gonna do that again down the road. I certainly appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Enjoy life in Spain. Always great talking to you. Looking forward to seeing you here, and I'm going to see you in Spain. You just wait and see.
Yeah, but first of all, I will see you in Chicago. Then you come to Spain, and of course you're more than welcome. You just have to come when I'm here, and we will have a great time.
Well, that's the whole point. Sounds good to me. Thanks a lot for your time. We appreciate it.